Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back from the extended holiday weekend. I hope you had a good 4th of July instead of coming to class. Yep, we'll be continuing lists. So I saw people guessing about that. So we'll be working on that today. You will need Replit as always. Also, as always, please stay muted if you're not speaking, and please raise your hand before you unmute yourself so that I know who is speaking, and so we don't have any confusing microphone issues occur. So thank you in advance. Also, I wanted to point out I did send out that survey. If you didn't fill it out, it's still open if you would like to get your opinion in there. But I think most of the class did fill it out, and here are just some of the results. We had about 60% said that the class pace is just right, and almost 85% said that they had just enough time to complete these assignments. So I consider that good. I'm not going to be changing anything. Again, the survey is still open if you still want to fill that out. But I'm not really going to be monitoring it for much longer. So thank you to everyone that filled that out, and I'm really happy to hear that the class pace is working for most people. If you are struggling and a lot of this doesn't make sense to you, maybe you got behind, please do remember we are trying to keep on top of uploading those recordings to YouTube. You can go back and watch them. You could even Google some other stuff if you're having issues. Sometimes you just need to hear someone else say it that's not your main instructor, and then it makes more sense. And also, I have been linking the free code camp. Oh, that's my cat. I have been linking the free code camp website on all of my slides. Cloud wants to teach class today, and honestly, I think he could do it. Please, reach out to me if you're having trouble. And yeah, hopefully you have those resources available. Okay, so we're gonna go back into lists, and we're gonna start with a little preliminary exercise. So, oops, I meant for this to be one at a time. So just work on these one at a time, put it in chat. Just this first one here, write code that constructs a list named MyList containing the following: the number 5, the string good evening, the number 10.45, and the Boolean false. Make sure that you're doing correct Python syntax. I know we're just typing it in chat, but I am checking for if you're putting in correct syntax, you're capitalizing things that you need to, you are using your syntax correctly. So go ahead and put in chat, what code would you write if you were going to construct a list named MyList that has those items in it? Go ahead and type that into chat, and be sure to think about it and then type your answer into chat. Don't type someone else's, because I want to make sure that you understand. All right, I'll wait a couple minutes for you to think about that. We're just doing this first bullet, so you don't need to move on. Just do the first one. Okay, so I've got one answer in the, okay, 2 answers in the chat. Go ahead and put your answers in the chat for this first bullet point here that constructs a list. And if you are struggling, you can also put that in the chat or message me privately, whichever you're comfortable with, just so I can see where we are with this. Sterling, yes, you have a question?
Sure, I have a question. What are we gonna do this year at camp?
Yeah, so we're gonna continue learning lists today. So hope you like lists. All right, I've got a couple answers here. Gonna give maybe one more minute and then I will go over just this first one. Some people have put in the others, that's okay too. Thank you all for your answers. I appreciate them. Okay, it's been almost a minute, so I'm gonna stop that. So yes, I've been seeing some great answers here. Thank you so much for those. So yes, so if we want to construct a list, now I'm gonna put it in the chat. We will do my list equal, oh, that doesn't make sense for me to do in the chat. Let's see, can I do it? Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna put it in this PowerPoint. And hopefully you have something like my list equals, and then don't forget these brackets, and do bracket, what is it, the number 5, the string, good evening. Don't forget the quotes are on the string, and also don't forget the commas in between each item. And then this Boolean false, no quotes, but it is capital F false. All right, great job. Now you can go ahead and do these next two, print out the second item in the list and print out the length of the list. Go ahead and put those in chat if you're going to print out the second item in the list, and then you're going to print out the length of the list. All right, got a couple answers coming in. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so if you're going to print out the second item in a list, remember we start counting from 0. So if I want to print this second item, which is good evening, I'm going to print 0, 1. So my index is 1. So I'm going to say print my list bracket 1. So that's how we access a specific item in a list, is with those brackets. And now for the next one, if I'm going to print out the length of the list, I see some people have already put it in there, and we've got len. We're going to use that len function. So I'm going to say print len my list. Oops, and make sure your parentheses match up here. So remember, we use that len function, length, to find the length of our list. Okay, now for this final one, to see if you remember how to do these for loops, do this last one here, print out each item in our list using a for loop. And go ahead and put that in the chat. Yep, I've already got some answers. Thank you very much. Go ahead and put that in the chat, print out each item in the list using a for loop. We're jumping right back into it. All right, I'll wait a couple more minutes for people to put their answers in. Thank you, thank you. All right, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, okay, so we've got some mixed answers on this one. I'm going to get rid of this bullet point here so you can see it more easily. So if we want to print out every item in the list using a for loop, the syntax for that, make sure you do this exactly. I'm going to say for item in my list, colon. So this can be item, this can be I. You can name this whatever you want. I said item because it looked like a lot of people were doing that. So for item in my list, colon. That is how we start a for loop. I'm going to press enter and my text got smaller. And don't forget that tab. And then you're going to say print item. And don't forget that this is indented here. Okay, so now that we've done this review, do we have any questions? If maybe you weren't sure how to do some of this, or it's coming back to you, but you still have a question. Are there questions about how we did this review right here? As always, please do raise your hand if you have a question, and I'll be looking out for that. I never know how long to wait for questions on Zoom because it's awkward for me to just be silent right here. But I also know that sometimes it takes time to unmute yourself. So usually I take a drink of my water while I wait.
Hi, what is your favorite color?
Hold on, we'll talk about that after class. Good question though. And please do raise your hand if you have a question, and then I'll unmute you.
Yes. What is your favorite part of the year?
Of the what?
What is your favorite part of the year?
The year?
Yes.
I like Halloween. That's my favorite. Sterling, did you have a question?
Sure, I do.
Okay.
What's back when you were learning how we learn about these, how we learned?
Yeah, we're going to be learning more about looping over lists. Okay, so then if there's no questions, I'm going to look at this. So last time we met, we had a little practice. I believe this was from last time. So we had my list equals all of these numbers, and then use a loop to go through each item in the above list. If that item is an even number, print the number and the phrase is an even number. So hopefully you are able to work on this from last time. And I will go ahead and show you how I would do this one. Okay, so Python, say, gonna call it loops and list. Okay, so it's booting up. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to have my list equals, I'm gonna grab those numbers. I don't grab the whole line from the PowerPoint just because sometimes it gets messed up. Yeah, see, so it adds weird extra stuff. Okay, so we have my list, and now I'm going to go through each item in the list. So what do I need to do to start this? What goes on this line here? Go ahead and type in the chat. What do I need to put on this line here? I've already started my list, and now I want to go through each item in the list. So if we're going to go through each item in a list, what are we going to do? So we're not printing just yet. We will be printing, but what do we need to go through each item in a list? Yes, we need a for statement. We need that for loop. So I'm going to say for I in my list, colon, just like we did in the review earlier. Yep. And then I'm going to press enter. And now I say, if that item is an even number, print the number and the phrase is an even number. So what do I need next? I only want to print something if it's even. So what needs to go on this next line? Yes, I need an if statement. Thank you. So now I'm going to say if, yep, and someone put it in there, if I mod 2 equals 0, colon, thank you. And now I'm going to print I. So I'm going to print I and then is an even number. Okay. Now if I run this, there we go. So now it's going through each item in our list. So it went through 1 and it was not even, so it didn't do anything. 3, 5, it got to 6. It's an even number, so it prints it's an even number. 10 and 12, the same thing. All right, so do we have any questions about this code? Please do let me know. Looks like we did a good job. We're all interacting in the chat. Okay, so that was from last time. So this catches us up to what we're going to be doing today. So we're continuing lists, but we are going to learn a bit more about lists. So this is kind of what we did last time we met before 4th of July. We learned how to construct a list. We learned that these brackets get us our lists. In our review, we talked about accessing different items in our list. Here we go over how we can use a for loop. We even throw in an if statement to go over the list and only print numbers that are even. We've done a lot with lists so far. It's looking pretty good. So now we're going to learn just a bit more about those lists. All right, so we've talked about how lists can contain numbers, they can contain ints, floats, strings, booleans, but lists can also contain other lists. These are called nested lists or a list of lists. And that's totally fine. A list can contain pretty much anything. So to do this, you just add more brackets. So each list is its own set of open and closed brackets. If there's a list inside of it, it's another inside set of open and closed brackets. So you just shove a list in there just like you would shove any other item into your list. So here I have my list of lists, and that's the variable name that I gave it, equals, and I have bracket, and then I have another bracket because this first item is a list. Hello, comma, world. The next item is a list of some integers and so on. And then notice that this is just its own integer hanging out here. It's still part of the list. You can throw anything into lists as long as you remember to put in more brackets. One thing to remember is that you count the index of a list by the outermost list. So each list inside of a list counts as its own item. It's not multiple items, it's its own thing because you can think of them as being packaged together. So the length of this here is 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 items in here, even though 3 of these items are their own lists. And then you can use indexing to access each of these items just as normal. So if I say list of lists bracket 1, it will return whatever is in that one index, which is the list 7, 11. And then if we want to access a specific object from the list that we just pulled, we use another index bracket and just add the index of the item inside the second list. So you can kind of think of it, you're just adding on more lists. So let's look at how that works. So let's say, I'm going to call it something else because we've been calling it my list. I'm going to call it example list equals let's see, we have, so if I have an example list, I can, make this equal whatever I want it to be, right? You can put whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to put another list inside. So I'm going to have open and close bracket again.
Hi.
Hey, please do stay muted during the class or raise your hand if you have a question. So I'm going to say hello.
Hello.
All right, Tanya, I need you to stay muted, comma, world. Okay, and then 7, 11. So another list I'm adding in here, just 7, 11. So these are their own little lists that I'm just peppering into ours. Next one is true. Oops, it's in another list. True, 8. And then this next one is just 1,000. Okay, so I'm going to expand this a little bit so you can see it. Now, if I want to access the first list here, so this index is 0. So I'm going to print example list 0. And now we can see, moving stuff around on my screen. If I run this, there we go. It prints. The first thing that we have in our list is that hello world list. So now if we want to access maybe just the word hello, we're going to print example list 0, and then another set of brackets 0 again, because we want the first thing from this list. So if I run that, we have hello, comma, world, and then we can index even further into the list and have hello. So similarly, if I wanted to get this list, that is at index 1. And then if I want the first number inside this list, that's 7, I can access it with 1, 0. So if I run this, we have 7, 11, and then just 7, because we access the first. We're kind of just going deeper and deeper into the list. Every time you add another index bracket here, you're just going deeper into the lists. What will not work though, is if you do something like this and add another bracket, it's going to say int object is not subscriptable. That's because it's an int and it's saying I can't grab the 0th part of an int because it's not a list and it makes Python break. So make sure that you have the right, you can't just do this infinitely. You can only do this when you have something that is what we call subscriptable, which for this class is just lists. So there we go. So if I wanted to access this, put in the chat, what would I print if I just wanted to access 1,000, this last element in our list here? All right, go ahead and put in chat. If I want to print this last element, 1,000, what would I print? All right, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, thank you. So it's just going to be example list and then index 3. Nothing too special about it. So you can have lists of lists and then still access single elements. Awesome. Now, what if I wanted to access 8, this number 8 right here? How would I type this? I can't talk. What would I print if I want to access 8? Go ahead and type in the chat. If I want to access the number 8 right here, what am I going to print? Not the number 8, I mean the 8 in this list. If I want to print that element of this list, what would I type out? All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for your answers. So yes, I'm going to print. So this is so we have 0, 1, 2. So this whole list is in the second index. And now if I want to access just this part of the list, that is 0, 1, the 1 index. So first I need access the second, the item number 2, item 2 in our list. And then inside of that, we want to access the one in the 1 index. And if we print that, we get 8. Perfect. Okay, so that's lists of lists. Very exciting. Let's see, Brandon, yes.
I was just wondering if there was a limit to the number of nested lists inside of other nested lists you can have.
Nope, it just depends on your computer's memory. But that's a great question. Yeah, you can have, any number of nestedness. It doesn't matter in Python. It's only dependent on, what kind of stuff you have. So, if I want to keep adding to this, I could have another list inside of this list. It's just 1, 2, 3. And then maybe in between 2 and 3, I'm going to add, another list that's another 1, 2, 3. And it could just keep going, and you could just keep indexing all the way in there. Yes, and so you do have to remember that Python starts indexing at 0. This is true for a lot of computer science. It starts counting at 0. So it's 0. Oh, now I've done a lot in this one, but it starts at 0. So you do have to remember that. It's just something you got to remember. All right, good questions. Okay, so now we talk about changing lists. So let's say you've made a list. It's a nice list, but you need to add something to it programmatically. So or you need to change it, and you don't want to just go back and change the whole line of code that you wrote. Maybe you want to have a user able to change your list. We'll see some other examples of it, but lists are mutable, which is a fancy Python computer science word, meaning that it's a variable that can be changed without reassigning it. So you don't have to make a whole new list. You can just change the list that you already created, and lists are mutable. This just means they can be changed. So after we create it, we can change it. And there are a couple ways to do this. One way is we can just reassign a list value using its index. So we talked about accessing a specific value based on its index and then replacing the value at that index. So let's say we have fruits list, it's apple, banana, cherry, but we want to change, maybe the last item here, and we want it to be orange. So we can access fruits list 2. We can say, just reassign that, say equals orange. And then we can print our fruits list and it should be different. So this is how we can change. I'm trying to get out of my slides so I can show you. Okay. So we have fruits list equals, say, apple, banana, and be cherry, I think. And now so I'm going to print fruits list just to show you what it looks like at first. And now if I want to say fruits list 2 equals orange, can't type, okay, orange. Now let's print fruits list and let's see what that does. All right, so first we have apple, banana, cherry. Then we have fruits list 2 equals orange, and so it changes it. It replaces cherry with orange. So we could do this with any number of fruits that we want. Fruits list 0 equals lemon. And now we can print that. And so we're able to change that list after we've already made it. So here it's apple, banana, cherry. We change the last element, it's apple, banana, orange. And then we change the first element and it's lemon, banana, orange. Okay, just checking time. So we are able to change lists. Okay, so there are some other things that we can do with lists, and these are called methods. These are just functions associated with a specific object in Python. So strings have their own methods, they can do fancy things. Lists have their own methods, they can do fancy things. We'll talk about the strings one later, but these are just pre-built functions in Python that you can do with specific data types. So in this case, we're looking at lists. We're going to use a dot to access that method. This will all make sense soon, don't worry. Just know that if you see like list dot something, we're accessing a method. So it's going to be, you know, variable name dot method name is how you can read it. So we can use these methods on any variable of a certain type. And this type we're using today is just lists. And we have several useful methods for a list. So I'm going to show you this on W3 Schools. This is also a really great resource if you need extra help. But that you can see there's all of these methods that just apply to lists, and this just allows us to do different things with lists. So this first one that we're going to learn about is append. So this lets us add an item to our list. So we learned about changing the item. But if I want, let's say I have fruits list, and then I say, oh, I want another item in fruits list. With what we have now, we can't just say fruits list, let's say 0, 1, 2, 3. We can't just make up fruits list 3 equals lemon or something like that, because it will give us an error, and errors are not that scary. It tells us exactly what's wrong. It says, index error list assignment index out of range. That's exactly what it sounds like. It says the list assignment that you're trying to do has an index 3 that's out of range for this list. This list cannot contain more than what it already does unless we use append. So now if we want to add something to the list, you can say fruits list dot append, and then whatever you want to add, and this will add it to the end of the list. So if we say fruits list dot append lemon, and then print fruits list, this appends lemon to the end of our list here. And we can keep doing this. We can say fruits list dot append coconut. And then if I print fruits list again, now we have added coconut, and you can keep doing that. So the append method, very useful. And if you want to read more about these methods, I did put that link in there as well. Okay, so I just did these append examples. Okay, now we talked about adding items. What if we want to remove items? So we can do kind of the same thing, except the word that we're going to use is not append, it is remove. So this removes a specific item, and you put the name of the item in there. So not the index or anything, you're just going to say, if we have this list banana, apple, cherry, and then we want fruits list dot remove apple, it will remove that for us. So don't forget your open and close parentheses. And this does change the list directly. So notice that here, I didn't say like fruits list equals fruits list dot append. You can do that. What I'm talking about here is this. You can do that if you want to, but this will change the list directly. So you could just type this out here. So let's say print fruits list. Now we're going to try remove. So we're going to do fruits list dot remove, and then you have parentheses. I'm going to remove banana. Now if I print fruits list, it removed banana from our list completely. So similarly, I could say something like fruits list dot remove cherry, and it would remove that instead. And then of course, while we're just messing around with this, oops, fruits list dot append watermelon. So we remove cherry and then we append watermelon. Cherry's gone, Oops, and I didn't print it. Print. Fruits list. All right, so that is us just messing around with our lists here. Okay, so the next one we just have, sorry, I'm looking ahead. We have a couple more methods to go through. Do we have questions? I want to take a minute to pause here. Do we have questions about lists and the append and remove methods so far? Always want to pause for questions, even if it's just, can you go over that again? Brandon.
Can you assign specific indexes to append things to or insert things into a list?
So if you assign it using the index, you overwrite whatever is in that index. So if you say fruits list 0 equals watermelon, it's just going to overwrite this apple right here, and it's going to replace it with watermelon. Oops, I didn't print it.
Right. I was just wondering if you could use append and add the index where you want to insert the.
No. So append just adds it at the very end of the list.
Okay.
You can get into different ways to do what you're wanting to do. But you can, but with append, it just adds it to the end. Okay. And yes, so that's a really good question. I see in the chat, it says, why are we doing this if we can just change it up here? Well, that's because maybe we don't always know what this list is going to be. So I'm trying to think of examples that would make sense for this class. Let's say you're letting a user. So if we want to ask user for an input, so I could say more fruit, oops. More fruit equals input, or like, name a fruit. So now I'm asking a user for the input, but I don't know what they're going to say. And I want to add that to my list. I can say fruits list.append, whatever they type in, more fruit. So here I can't just change this because I don't necessarily know what that's going to be. So now if I run this, it'll say, oh, and I didn't, okay. Control C, stop. Because I didn't print it. So now, it's also good for if you're in a loop and in the middle of a loop, you need to add something to a list depending on some other conditions that happen. So let's see with this. Let's say name a fruit. I'm going to say orange. And now it adds that to the end of my list. So that's one reason. Another reason could be that maybe we're in the middle of a loop and you need to add something to your list based on a condition. Maybe we're creating another list. You have an empty list and you need to add things to it. There's many ways that append has come into use for me specifically. I've used it a lot. All right, these are great questions. Any others? Sterling.
Yes, I got an answer before we end this. Well, so what is the question?
Oh no, I'm
Don't worry
asking
about
if
something.
other people have questions, if you're confused.
Oh
Are
yeah,
you confused?
I worry about something about how to read about the words.
Yeah, so you can go to, I have a link for the methods in the slides, and it will take you to W3 schools where you can read more about this.
Yes, that was good.
Awesome. Okay, so we've done append and remove. This other one that's interesting for us is sort. So this will sort items either it's alphanumerically, so that's numbers and letters only, and this also changes the list directly. So if we call it sort on a string, it will sort this in alphabetical order for us. So let's say you have a list of names and you want to put them in alphabetical order, like these fruit names. You can do fruits list dot sort, and it will sort that for us. Okay, so now, don't read that yet. Whoops. We're gonna do an example of that one. So if we have fruits list dot sort, and now if I print fruits list again. All right, so we have apple, banana, cherry. So let's see, what does it look like before this? Looks like that. Apple, banana, cherry, apple, banana. Oops, it's because I already put it in order. That's funny. All right, let's add watermelon up here. Okay, so before we sort it, we have watermelon, apple, banana, cherry, and then we sort it and it puts it in alphabetical order for us. So, let's see what happens if we add some numbers in here, just mixing it up a bit. And it will give us an error because we can only compare, this is basically comparing, greater than or less than, and we can only compare, numbers together and strings together. So you can't have a list of numbers and letters and have it sort it for you. It will just do this with strings. So let's see. Now, if we just have numbers, we are able to sort those. All right, so that is the sort method. And now, what do you think will happen here if I have this argument in here? And here I can add reverse equals true. What do you think will happen? A couple of people put in the chat. What do you think this will do if I have reverse equals true? Any guesses? What will this do? Yes, it's going to sort it in reverse order. So instead of alphabetical order, it's going to sort it in reverse. So it's doing just what you think it is. It says reverse equals true, sort it in reverse. So now it's going to have watermelon, cherry, banana, apple. It's in reverse alphabetical order. Awesome. Great job. Okay, now we talked about using this reverse equals true, but we can also reverse a list. It's different from sort. So sort, we're going by alphabetical order or numerical order. But if we just want to take the list as it is and then flip it, we'll use this reverse method. So different from adding reverse equals true over here. I just realized that the order I put these slides in makes it a little confusing. But if we want, so let's say we have a list, it's, apple, cherry, banana, watermelon, and we want to completely just flip that list, reverse it, then you can say list dot reverse. This is changing the list directly again. So here we have banana, apple, cherry. We can say fruits list dot reverse, and this will make the last item the first item and so on. So let's try out this one. Okay, so I'll just get rid of this one just so you can see it better. Now I'm gonna say fruits list dot reverse and print that. So now if we print it, we have banana, apple, watermelon. It just took this whole list and flipped it. All right, that's reversed. Reverse. We've already done Lynn. Oh, this is list review. Okay, so here are the main methods that we have gone over. We've got append, remove, sort, reverse, and just so you're aware, we did go over a couple. There's a lot on this list. You may be getting overwhelmed, thinking, how am I supposed to remember all of these? Well, I don't really expect you to remember all of them. The most used, at least in my experience as a programmer, has been append and remove, adding things to lists, removing things to lists. It's really useful for data. So if you're dealing with a lot of scientific data and you're making new lists, creating lists, removing things from lists, doing all sorts of calculations, that's when it's really useful. So I mostly just use append and remove. I rarely use the other ones, but I did want to mention them because I do get a lot of questions from people that say, how do I reverse a list? How do I sort a list? Because it can come in handy sometimes. And there's way more methods than the ones that we talked about today. You're not expected to remember them all. There's a lot with programming that you're not expected to remember all by yourself, especially with Google. Google is your friend. You can say, you know, how do I reverse a list in Python? And it'll pop up, use the reverse method. Now we have ChatGPT. I highly encourage you to use ChatGPT as a tool. You know, don't use it just to ask for the answer. Use it to help you code. Ask it why, like, you know, why does this part work in my code? Why does this not work in my code? Have a conversation with it. It's a really good tool. And then of course, this web page here is the W3 Schools list methods. So I'm not really expecting you to just know these off the top of your head, except for append and remove. Those are the really important ones. And then we did talk about lists. There are other ways to collect things. List is just one way to store groups of variables. There's others called dictionaries, tuples, sets. I just want you to focus on lists first and then explore others if you want to. We won't be covering them in the class, but I always get some students asking because they've done other programming languages, what about dictionaries? What about tuples? So you can look these up. W3 Schools has some pretty good materials on those as well. Okay, so I wrote up an assignment for today and it didn't get copied over to my slides. So let's write that up again. Okay, so I'm going to give you an assignment that you could work on for the last couple minutes of class. You can stick around and ask questions, or you can go once you're done with the assignment. I will have to find the one because it got lost. Say task. All right, now I'm going to be typing this live, which is embarrassing. Okay, so I want you to write Python code that oops, 1813, and I'll come up with a more applied example. Okay, so apologies for awkwardly just typing that while you sat there, but here's the task that I want you to work on for the last 10 minutes of class. And then once you're done with this, you're free to go. And of course, we'll go over it when we return. So go ahead and start working on this. I want you to write Python code that constructs this list. And then do the following. So first, add the number 10 to the end of the list. So make another item in the list that is 10. There's already a 10 in there, but you can have another 10. Remove the number 5 from the list. Sort the list in numerical order. and then change the number 9 to be the value 11. And I'm gonna escape out of this because I also want you to print the current list after each change. So keep printing the list so that you can see how it is changing. All right. Thank you very much. I know it's a bit of, I know my brain is still coming back online after having an extended weekend. So thank you very much for sticking with me through that. And I will see you after this weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday. So you're free to go after you've finished this, or if you just need to go, that's totally fine. But we're going to stay and work on this. Let me know if you have questions. Please don't hesitate to ask questions. I want to make sure everyone is succeeding and doing well in the class. And yeah, so we are good to go. I don't know why it took me so long to say that.
All right, bye.